Let's get this bloodbath started.
I feel like every time I start to get sick of playing all of these old retro throwback shooters, it seems another one comes along that pulls me back in and catches my interest. Yes, son, it's no secret that I'm pretty fond of first-person shooters, as well as single malt scotch and brunettes. And anything that reminds me of the simpler times in gaming is always something that I'm going to be more receptive towards. And if you're at all into indie games, especially shooters, well, you know we've had no shortage of these things recently either.
I will gut you like a fish!
This time around, it's a game called Viscerafest, developed by Acid Man Games, which kinda looks like a more fast-paced and violent version of Marathon, mixed with Blake Stone and Corridor 7, with a very vocal female protagonist who takes a little bit too much pleasure in her work.
Oh, boo-hoo. When does the hurting stop?
And it also looks like she's about to transform into some kind of eldritch horror if the promotional artwork is anything to go off. Now, there's a recently released public demo that's free to play on their Discord server. If all you want to know though is if it's worth playing, well, let me just tell you right off the bat that that's a definitive yes.
Light 'em up!
The way I kind of gauge these games is really just by my first opinion. I mean, it's not rocket science. I reckon I know within the first 5 or so minutes of playing a shooter in terms of how it feels and controls as to whether or not I'm going to like it in the long run. And thankfully the response I had to this one was positive. Right off the bat, the game is just ticking all of the right boxes. You got a main menu screen that looks like a combination of Duke Nukem 3Ds combined with Doom. I mean, this guy over here is even looking back at the camera like in that old Doom poster. Viscerafest visuals are a combination of 3D environments and 2D sprites, with sprite work that kinda skates a thin line between looking good and looking under-detailed. Starting off the demo though, you do get some pretty awesome looking artwork and some decent voice acting that gives a good basic premise as to what's going on here. So our protagonist Caroline is a mercenary, and you don't need to be an expert to figure out she's probably got her moral compass spinning in a whole heap of different directions. And I kinda get the gist that she's not entirely a good guy, or a good gal. And I imagine if she ever ran into Shelley Harrison, we'd be witness to a pretty damn brutal catfight.
Clean up on aisle your ass. Who wants some, huh?
Anyway, her goal is pretty simple. She's got to sneak onto some top secret space station to steal enough loot to afford an engagement ring to give to her height-challenged little alien partner, who I'm assuming has a charming personality. To do this, she's got to hunt down a warlock named Chromium, who's taken refuge on the station, which is inhabited by the United Scientific Conglomerate, who, it seems, are pretty much just minding their goddamn business until Carolyn shows up. And it becomes apparent really soon into the game that she ain't the kind of clean-cut hero you might have been expecting.
I'd say I'm sorry, but you know it wouldn't be sincere.
After intercepting some radio transmissions throughout the demo, you'll come to understand that whatever's going on here is something of actual importance. At least, more important than Caroline redecorating the place with everyone's internal organs, just to be able to afford an engagement ring. Still though, I've got to respect the hustle.
But the consequences of us failing are beyond your ability to comprehend.
Yeah, that's real cute and all, Doc, but save it for someone who actually cares.
It's actually a really intriguing story, and I think the fact that so little information is given to the player just makes it even more captivating. You'll end the demo with more questions than answers, like wondering what's going on with the messed up looking marks on Carolyn's face, which kinda reminds me of Dr. Blight from Captain Planet. Oh, Dr. Blight. Anyway, other than that, this is just a pretty standard first-person shooter. The kind that controls very well and has satisfying gunplay, and that's really all there is to it. I mean, you don't need much more than that, but you'd be surprised how many games screw this up right off the bat. Bad aiming and movement controls in first-person shooters is kinda like putting your underwear on backwards. You might not notice it at first, but eventually you'll start to realize that something is terribly wrong. Early on, the demo also encourages you to use melee attacks as well as using your weapons. You see, ammo on the space station isn't all that generous, so you can't really just go running into rooms gung-ho and spraying your weapons willy-nilly. Often trying to put a few of these aliens out of misery with your bare hands is ideal. Not to mention, it's usually accompanied by some of Caroline's trash talking. A bit of a staple of FPS protagonists from the 90s, and one that fits in well here.
Oh, you're gonna need more than a band-aid to fix that.
Yeah, and you can tell the girl doing the voice acting is genuinely having fun with the dialogue here, and she does a pretty bang-up job of it.
I will gut you like a fish!
When it comes to shooting things, your basic starting weapon is a pistol, the Skull Piercer, which isn't amazing and it fires so slowly, I think it'd do more damage if you threw it at someone. But it does a good enough job against the weaker enemies. This thing is soon replaced by the Shredders, dual assault rifles that use the same ammo type but are obviously way more effective. It's also got the bonus of being named after one of my favourite movie villains. Yeah, Super Shredder from the hit movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Secret of Use. Yeah, what a classic that was. Next up is the old trusty shotgun, and honestly at this point in my sad, pathetic life, about all that's getting me out of bed in the morning is shotguns in indie FPS games. I mean, that and Rodney in Animal Crossing, I just love that guy so much. It also happens to be a double-barreled shotgun too, because as we all know, the only thing better than a shotgun is more shotgun. The last few weapons are kind of interesting. You've got the Pung Cannon, which is kind of like a rifle that fires out explosive rounds. I actually googled Pung out of interest just to see what came up, and apparently Pung is Swedish for balls.
You want some?
If on the off chance the double-barreled shotgun wasn't enough, well, they got you covered with the Deus Mortis, a quad-barreled shotgun. It's the kind of thing that feels like it should be in a Doom mod.
Rip and tear, baby!
What did I say before? How the only thing better than a shotgun is more shotgun? Yeah, well, proof here is in the pudding.
Are you dead yet?
Finally, you've got the Plague Rifle, a weapon that couldn't be better suited for 2020 if it tried. That shoots out biohazard waste, the same thing that comes out of your mum. This thing stuns enemies for a bit, kinda like the flechettes in Hexen before finally killing them.
Would you kindly die?
Now the trap I think a lot of these retro shooters make is not really trying to add in anything new or all that innovative. And on paper, a few of these weapons do seem pretty generic, but I think they're still really fun to use in combat. The reason for that partly is just due to how the gunplay feels, with great looking particle effects and satisfying kills on enemies. And also I think along with the fact that ammo is so limited that finally being able to go ham on a room of enemies just feels that much more satisfying. It's kinda like not scratching a mosquito bite and just letting it become super itchy, for whipping out a hairbrush and scratching the ever-loving fuck out of it. Know what I mean? Running into a room and finally unleashing on everything is just incredibly cathartic. In fact, one of the main ways to get health back is by jibbing enemies, leaving behind these chunky remains for you to pick up. It's almost as badass as having to cover yourself in blood to recover your health, which is a neat idea and something that someone should totally implement into a video game.
Fine. Have it your way.
Combine this all with smooth movement controls, including that all-important dash move, which honestly at this point I think just should be mandatory for shooting games, along with some secret hunting and complex levels, and you got a pretty damn good mix.
Sleek.
Caroline, I think, talks just enough shit to make her likable without coming across as annoying or obnoxious.
Oh baby, let's make a mess together.
Now, this ain't the longest demo in the world. In fact, the first time I played it, it probably only took me 30 or 40 minutes to get through. For the second playthrough, it was even less than this. But that's not to say it doesn't have any value and isn't worth checking out, because it still manages to be fun whilst it lasts. Kinda reminds me of playing an old Shareware episode back in the 1990s, and it succeeds in giving you just enough gameplay before teasing you and then coming to an end. I would like to talk more about the game and really tongue its asshole, but there's just not all that much else to say about it. Guess if there's one thing, it's that the movement speed might be a little bit too fast, making platforming kinda tricky. And honestly, hearing Caroline go on about locked doors gets annoying pretty quickly.
It won't open.
Yes, I get it, Duke Nukem used to say it all the time, I get the reference. But it doesn't stop it from becoming annoying, especially when secret hunting.
Ugh, it won't open.
I'm hoping there's going to be some kind of variety to the environments too, because playing the same looking interior locations over and over is just going to get super repetitive. Not to mention, it might just start to feel claustrophobic all the time if you're cooped up inside this space station. But I really can't see any fundamental problems, and for a game that's still kinda early in its development cycle, I think things are looking pretty good. Having said that it's early though, this is a game that's apparently been in development for 8 or so years now. I've had the fortune to be in touch with the developer, and it's pretty obvious this guy's committed and enthusiastic about what he's working on here. I just hope we don't have to wait another 8 years to finally play it. The great thing about all these indie games is that they're usually being worked on by people who actually have a genuine passion and interest in what they're creating, and they've been with it since its inception. And that's why games like Ultra Kill or Maximum Action are always going to be more enjoyable to me than whatever the latest Call of Duty game is that they've pumped out. Unfortunately though, there's currently no way to support the game's development. There's no Patreon page, no Kickstarter or any of that shit, which is a real waste if you ask me, and kinda dumb on the developer for not having one. But you can head over to their Discord and show your support and hopefully wishlist it on Steam if it ever hits that platform in the near future. You can tell things are getting pretty serious here because apparently there's already Rule 34 that's being created for this thing. Next thing you know, it's going to get picked up and published by New Blood Interactive, and then Dave Oshry's going to start tweeting about it every 5 minutes. So here's your chance, Sonny Jim, to get in on the ground floor before all that happens. Then you can be one of those people that gets to say, I liked Viscerafest before it was cool.
Now sit down!